The galaxy chuckled when humans sent one ship. Then it arrived. Jack Winters stood alone in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. He was the only human in a room filled with aliens from 300 different worlds. Jack took a deep breath and spoke into the silence. "Earth will send one ship to face the Voidborn threat," he said. For a moment, no one spoke. Then a low rumble began. It grew louder until the whole chamber shook with laughter. The tall, blue-skinned Arcturians clutched their sides. The floating, mist beings of Rigel pulsed with amusement. Even the usually serious rock creatures of Deneb made grinding sounds that passed for chuckles among their kind. One ship? The council leader, a six-armed being called Zoral, fought to control his laughter. The Voidborn fleet has destroyed entire civilizations. They crushed the Zenith Defense Force with its 1,000 warships. And you humans, barely out of your home system, think one ship will make a difference? Jack's face remained calm, even as his stomach twisted with anger and shame. "We offer what we can," he said simply, then left the chamber as the laughter followed him out. Back on Earth, Admiral Susan Miller watched the transmission end. At 58 years old, she had steel-gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much war. She turned to the small group gathered in the command center of Earth's last orbital station. "Well, that went as expected," she said. Commander Paul Reeves, her second-in-command, shook his head. "They don't understand us yet." "They will," Susan said. She looked through the viewport at the ship docked outside. It wasn't very big compared to the giant vessels of older spacefaring races. The name ESV Defiance was painted on its side, in bold letters. Susan's chief engineer, Alan Rogers, stepped forward. He was in his 40s with tired eyes and hands stained with engine grease. "The phase converter is installed, Admiral. But I have to warn you again, this technology is based on a crashed Voidborn scout ship. We think it will work, but we've never tested it in real conditions." "Will it fly, Alan?" Susan asked. "Yes." "Will it fight?" Alan rubbed his face. "In theory, it should do much more than fight. If I'm right about the Voidborn technology having this weakness, well, one ship might be enough." Susan nodded. "Then we proceed as planned." The command center doors opened, and Lisa Green entered. As communications officer, she had been coordinating with what remained of Earth Command. The last civilian, "Ships are launching now, Admiral. Evacuation is at 60% capacity." "It will have to be enough," Susan said. She looked around at her team. "We leave in 6 hours. Get some rest while you can." Later, Susan stood alone in her quarters, recording a message on a small device. "Kate, honey, by the time you get this, we'll be gone. Keep helping with the evacuations. You're doing important work." She paused, looking at a photo of her daughter. "We may not return, but we will not go quietly." As the launch hour approached, 38 crew members boarded the Defiance. Each had been picked for their special skills. They were Earth's best, and possibly its last hope. Doug Franklin, the tactical officer, studied star charts in the ship's war room. He had plotted their course through dangerous space to reach the Voidborn fleet, while avoiding detection for as long as possible. In the medical bay, Dr. Sam Green prepared his equipment. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew casualties were likely. Helen Garcia calibrated the sensor arrays. As the ship's eyes and ears, she would need to spot danger before it found them. Ryan Cooper checked and rechecked the weapon systems. They were simple by galactic standards, but he had some surprises planned for the enemy. Security Chief Nancy Watson led her small team through combat drills. If the Voidborn boarded them, her people would be the last line of defense. Olivia Martinez helped Alan make final adjustments to the phase converter. The strange device hummed in the engine room, its parts glowing with an unearthly light. "Will it really work?" Olivia asked quietly. Alan looked at the machine. 3 months ago, I would have said no. But we've learned so much from that crashed scout ship. The Voidborn use a type of dimensional phasing for their weapons and drives. If we can disrupt that phasing... He shrugged. Then maybe, just maybe, we have a chance. On the bridge, Susan settled into the captain's chair. Paul took his place beside her, while Lisa established their final link with Earth Command. "All systems ready, Admiral," Paul reported. Susan looked at the main screen, which showed Earth growing smaller as the station moved away. There were still millions of people down there waiting for evacuation ships that might never come if the Defiance failed. "Start the main drive," Susan ordered. "Set course for the Orion sector." The ship's engines came to life with a deep rumble. Outside, blue light flared as the Defiance moved away from the station. Susan opened a channel to the entire ship. "This is Admiral Miller. We all know our mission. The Voidborn Armada will reach Earth in 14 days. We have until then to stop them. The Galactic Council laughed at us. They think one ship can't make a difference." She paused. "Let's prove them wrong." The Defiance accelerated, the stars on the view screen stretching into lines as the faster-than-light drive engaged. The ship disappeared into the depths of space, carrying with it humanity's last hope. On the Galactic Council station, a maintenance worker approached Jack Winters as he prepared to return to Earth. "I heard what happened in the Council," the worker said. He wasn't human, but looked similar enough. "They shouldn't have laughed." Jack shrugged. "It doesn't matter. We're used to being underestimated." The worker looked curious. "But why only one ship? Surely you could have sent more." "We only needed one," Jack said, his eyes holding a secret. The Council had missed between their laughs. Sometimes quality matters more than quantity. As Jack's shuttle pulled away from the station, he watched the stars and wondered if he would ever see Susan and her crew again. The Defiance was heading into darkness, toward an enemy that had destroyed worlds. But if there was one thing humans knew how to do, it was to defy the odds. The galaxy chuckled when humans sent one ship. Then it arrived. 2 weeks passed as the Defiance traveled deeper into space than any human ship had gone before. The crew settled into their routines, but tension filled the air. Everyone knew they were heading toward an enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations. Susan spent most of her time on the bridge, studying reports and planning their approach. She slept little, and when she did, dreams of Earth's burning cities followed her. "Admiral," Helen called from her sensor station. "I'm picking up a ship ahead." Susan straightened in her chair. "Voidborn?" "No." Helen adjusted her instruments. "It's a Zenith Coalition cruiser, but it's damaged, no engine signature." The Zenith Coalition had been among the few who tried to help Earth when the Voidborn first attacked. They had paid a heavy price for their kindness. "Any life signs?" "Susan?" asked. Helen nodded. "Faint, but yes." "Lisa, open a channel," Susan ordered. When the communications officer nodded, Susan spoke clearly. "This is Admiral Susan Miller of the Earthship Defiance. Do you need assistance?" Static filled the speakers, then broke into a weak voice. "Earthship? Out here? This is Captain Kretal of the Zenith vessel Starlight. We need help." Within an hour, the Defiance had matched course with the drifting Zenith ship. Susan led a small team including Dr. Sam and security, Chief Nancy, to the damaged vessel. The interior of the Zenith ship was dark with emergency lights casting red shadows. Captain Kretal met them in what remained of the main corridor. He was an avian being with feathers that might once have been bright blue but were now dirty and singed. His right wing hung at an awkward angle. "Humans," he said, his bird-like eyes blinking in surprise. "I never expected to see your kind this deep in contested space." Sam moved forward with a medical scanner. "May I check your injuries, Captain?" While Sam tended to Kretal and the other survivors, Susan questioned the captain about what had happened. "We were on a reconnaissance mission," Kretal explained. "The Voidborn destroyed our fleet weeks ago, but a few ships escaped. We were trying to gather information on their movements." He shook his head. "They caught us near the Cygnus crossing. My ship was damaged, but we managed to hide in a nebula and drift this far before our engines failed completely." "How many ships in the Voidborn fleet ahead?" Susan asked. "At least 200, Kretal said. Maybe more. They're gathering for a major push into this sector." His eyes narrowed. "But what are you doing here? And in only one ship?" Susan shared a look with Nancy before answering. We're on a mission to stop the Voidborn. Krital made a sound between a laugh and a squawk. Stop them? With one ship? Admiral, my people had 50 warships and the Voidborn crushed us in hours. We may have found a weakness in their technology, Susan said simply. Krital studied her, then slowly nodded. You humans are either very brave or very foolish. Perhaps both. After helping the Zenith crew make essential repairs to their life support systems, Susan invited Krital to the Defiance to share what he knew about the Voidborn fleet's position. In the war room, Doug brought up a holographic map of the sector. Krital pointed to a cluster of red dots. The main fleet is here, he said. They have scout ships patrolling these areas. His feathered hand swept across several star systems. If you continue on your current course, you'll encounter them within 3 days. Doug looked at Susan. We could try to go around them, Admiral, but it would add at least a week to our journey. We don't have a week, Susan said. Earth has days, not weeks. She studied the map and pointed to a dense asteroid field. What about through here? Krital chirped in alarm. That's the Certain field. The rocks there move in unpredictable patterns. No large ship can navigate it safely. The Defiance isn't large by your standards, Susan said. Doug, can we make it through? The tactical officer studied the field data. It would be tight, but yes, the Voidborn ships are much bigger than ours. They couldn't follow. Then that's our path, Susan decided. Before the Defiance continued its journey, Susan offered to take the Zenith survivors aboard. To her surprise, Krital and 3 of his crew asked to join them. Our ship will never fly properly again, Krital said, and I would like to see this weakness you found in the Voidborn. If you succeed, my people need to know how. In the engineering bay, Alan and Olivia worked without rest to refine the phase converter. Early tests had produced unstable results, threatening to tear holes in the ship's hull. The problem is the quantum harmonics, Alan said, looking at the data on his screen. When we activate the converter, it creates a cascade effect we can't control. Olivia studied the equations, then looked at the Voidborn technology they had salvaged. What if we're approaching this wrong, she asked. We've been trying to disrupt their weapon systems, but what if we targeted their communication frequency instead? Alan looked up sharply. What do you mean? The Voidborn ships move together perfectly, like they share one mind, Olivia explained. What if they do? What if there's a communication network linking them all? If we could disrupt that? Alan's tired face broke into a smile. That could work. Let's recalibrate. As the Defiance entered the edge of the asteroid field, the bridge crew watched in tense silence. Massive rocks, some as big as the ship itself, floated around them. Doug's hands moved steadily over the controls, guiding the ship through the narrowing gaps. This is like threading a needle while riding a bicycle down a mountain, Paul muttered. A large asteroid spun toward them, and Doug quickly adjusted their course. The ship shuddered as smaller rocks scraped against the shields. Shields, holding at 80%, Ryan reported from the weapons station. It took 6 tense hours to navigate the field. When they emerged on the other side, a cheer went up from the bridge crew, but the celebration was short-lived. Admiral, Helen said, her voice tight. Sensors are detecting multiple ships ahead, Voidborn scout vessels. Susan took a deep breath. They had found the enemy sooner than expected. Battle stations, she ordered. Lisa, open a channel on all frequencies. Channel open, Admiral. Susan stood tall. This is Admiral Susan Miller of Earth. We've come to talk. The view screen lit up with the image of a Voidborn ship. It was black and sleek, with strange protrusions that glowed with purple energy. For a long moment, there was no response. Then the Voidborn launched their fighters. The galaxy chuckled. When humans sent one ship. Then it arrived. The Voidborn fighters streaked toward the Defiance like angry hornets. There were 12 of them, each the size of a small shuttle, their hulls glowing with the same purple energy as their mothership. So much for talking, Paul said. Susan gripped the arms of her chair. Ryan, arm all weapons. Doug, evasive pattern delta. The Defiance surged forward, then swerved sharply as the first wave of fighters opened fire. Purple, energy beams cut through space where the ship had been seconds before. "Return fire," Susan ordered. Ryan's fingers flew over his console. The ship's guns roared to life, sending bright blue pulses toward the enemy. 2 fighters exploded as direct hits tore through their shields. 2 down, Ryan reported. 10-2. Go. Doug kept the ship moving in unpredictable patterns, but they couldn't dodge everything. The ship shook as enemy fire struck their shields. "Shields at 60%, Helen called out. The battle raged for nearly an hour. The Defiance shouldn't have lasted 10 minutes against so many enemies, but Doug's flying skills kept them just ahead of destruction. Ryan found weak spots in the Voidborn fighters that no one had seen before. 4 more enemy ships exploded under his careful aim, but the Defiance was taking damage. A lucky shot from one fighter hit an exposed part of the hull, causing a small breach. "Hull breach on deck 3, Paul reported. "Emergency containment activated." Susan was about to respond when the ship rocked with a much larger impact. "What was that?" she demanded. Helen checked her sensors. "The mothership has joined the fight. Its weapons are much stronger than the fighters." "We can't take much more of this," Paul warned. Susan hit the ship-wide comm. "Alan, we need the phase converter now." In the engine room, Alan and Olivia worked, frantically amid sparking panels and hissing steam pipes. "It's not ready," Alan shouted back. "The targeting system isn't calibrated for the communication frequency yet." Another hit rocked the ship. Olivia grabbed a railing to keep from falling. "We need more time," she said. Above them, on the bridge, Susan made a quick decision. "Doug, take us back into the asteroid field." Paul looked at her in shock. "Admiral, we barely made it through the first time, and that was with full shields, and no one shooting at us. It's our only chance," Susan insisted. "The Voidborn ships are bigger, they'll have an even harder time following us." Doug didn't argue. He turned the ship sharply and headed back toward the massive rocks floating in space. The Voidborn fighters followed, still firing. As they entered the field, Doug weaved between asteroids with incredible skill. 2 Voidborn fighters crashed into rocks when they couldn't turn fast enough. Another was crushed between 2 colliding asteroids, but the Defiance wasn't unscathed. A direct hit from the mothership before they reached the field had weakened their shields further, and now, small rocks were hitting the hull directly. "Hull integrity at 70%, Helen reported. "We're taking damage from the asteroids now." The ship shuddered as a larger rock scraped along its side. "Find us a place to hide," Susan ordered. "Somewhere we can make repairs." Doug spotted a cluster of large asteroids moving slowly together. "There," he said, pointing to a gap between them. "We can slip in there and be hidden from their sensors." He guided the ship into the tight space. The remaining Voidborn fighters circled outside the asteroid cluster, unable to follow. "Power down all non-essential systems," Susan ordered. "Let them think we've been destroyed." The bridge lights dimmed as they reduced power. On the view screen, they watched as the Voidborn fighters continued to search for several minutes, then finally turned and headed back to their mothership. "They're leaving," Helen whispered. "For now," Susan said. "But they'll be back with more ships once they report finding us." She stood up. "We have a few hours at most. Paul, organize repair teams. I want this ship ready to fight again as soon as possible." Susan went to the engine room to check on Alan and Olivia. The phase converter sat in the center of the room, parts of it glowing with an otherworldly light. "How long?" she asked. Alan wiped sweat from his forehead. "The recalibration for the communication frequency is working." Olivia was right. The Voidborn ships are connected somehow. But we need to test it before we use it in battle. "Test it how?" Susan asked. "We salvaged a small piece of Voidborn technology from that crashed scout ship," Olivia explained. "If the converter can disrupt that, it should work on their ships too." Susan nodded. "Do it. I'll be on the bridge." As she left, Kretal approached her in the corridor. The avian alien had been helping with repairs, his knowledge of space combat proving valuable. "Your ship fought well," he said. "Better than I expected." "Thanks," Susan replied. "But we got lucky." Krital tilted his head. Not luck. Skill. Your pilot flies like no one I've seen before, and your weapons officer found weaknesses in the Voidborn fighters that my people missed in dozens of battles. Susan allowed herself a small smile. Humans are good at finding ways to win when we're outmatched. So I see, Krital said. Then, his tone grew serious. But the mothership has surely called for reinforcements by now. The main fleet isn't far away. I know, Susan said. That's why we need to get the phase converter working. As repairs continued around the ship, Nancy Watson, the security chief, reported to the bridge. Admiral, my team checked the hull breach on Deck 3. It's sealed for now, but that section isn't safe. Casualties? Susan asked. 2 injured. No deaths, Nancy replied. Dr. Sam is treating them now. Susan nodded, relieved. Then Helen's voice cut through the moment of calm. Admiral, sensors are showing multiple ships entering this sector. Susan's heart sank. Voidborn reinforcements? No, Helen said, surprise in her voice. They're Zenith ships. 3 cruisers. Lisa's. Station beeped. We're receiving a transmission from the lead ship. Put it through, Susan ordered. The view screen showed another avian being, similar to Krital, but with darker feathers. Earth vessel, this is Commander Zev of the Zenith Resistance. We picked up your battle with the Voidborn. Captain Krital is an old friend of mine. Is he aboard your ship? Krital stepped forward. I am here, Zev. These humans have a plan to fight the Voidborn. They need our help. Zev nodded. Then they shall have it. The Voidborn took our homes. We have nothing left to lose. Susan felt hope rising in her chest. Commander Zev, we welcome your assistance. But you should know that our plan is risky. We've developed a device that might disrupt the Voidborn network, but it's untested. Better an untested hope than no hope at all, Zev replied. We will buy you time to finish your work. As the Zenith ships took up defensive positions around the asteroid cluster, Alan's voice came over the comm. Admiral, you need to see this. The test worked. The phase converter is ready. Susan exchanged looks with Paul. Then it's time to take the fight to the Voidborn. The galaxy chuckled when humans sent one ship. Then it arrived. Susan, Paul, and Krital gathered in the engine room, where Alan and Olivia stood proudly beside the phase converter. The device hummed with energy, its core glowing with a blue-white light. Show me, Susan said. Alan picked up a small piece of Voidborn technology, a curved black metal shard with faint purple lines running through it. He placed it on a table near the converter. Watch, he said, then pressed a button on his control pad. The phase converter pulsed. A wave of blue energy washed over the Voidborn shard. The purple lines flickered, then went dark. The shard itself seemed to crack slightly as if something inside it had broken. The energy signature is completely gone, Olivia explained. The converter disrupts the specific frequency the Voidborn use to communicate and power their technology. Will it work on their ships? Paul asked. It should, Alan said. But there's a catch. The effect has a limited range, about 5,000 kilometers. We'll need to get close to their command ship to affect the entire fleet. Susan frowned. That's too close. Their weapons would tear us apart before we could activate it. The Zenith ships could help, Krital suggested. They could draw some of the fire away from you. Susan nodded slowly. We'll need a plan. A good one. They returned to the bridge where Commander Zev's image waited on the view screen. The phase converter works, Susan told him. But to affect the Voidborn fleet, we need to get close to their command ship. Zev nodded. My scouts report that the main Voidborn fleet is only 6 hours away. They're moving toward this position now. Then we don't have much time, Susan said. Here's what I propose. Your ships engage the outer defense line. While the Voidborn are focused on you, the Defiance will slip through to their command ship. Embriar. Bold plan, Zev said. But the Voidborn will still have many ships protecting their command center. We'll deal with those when we get there, Susan replied. For now, let's focus on repairs and prepare for battle. The next 6 hours passed in a blur of activity. Repair teams fixed what damage they could. Ryan worked with the Zenith weapons specialists to coordinate their attack. Doug and Helen plotted the most direct course to the heart of the Voidborn fleet. In the medical bay, Dr. Sam checked on the injured crew members one last time. They should stay here during the battle, he told Susan. No, said one of the injured engineers, sitting up despite his bandaged arm. My station is in engineering. I'm not hiding when the fight comes. Susan saw the same determination in everyone's eyes. Her throat tightened with pride. Get to your stations, she said simply. All of you. When Helen's sensors detected the approaching Voidborn fleet, all 4 ships, the Defiance and the 3 Zenith cruisers, moved out from the asteroid field in formation. Mother of stars, Paul whispered as the viewscreen showed what they faced. At least 200 Voidborn ships filled the space ahead of them. The smaller ones were twice the size of the Defiance, while the larger warships dwarfed even the Zenith cruisers. In the center of the formation was a massive ship, shaped like a black star with 5 points, each one as long as a small moon. That's their command ship, Kretal said, his feathers ruffling in fear. The Void Star. Susan took a deep breath. Signal Commander Zev. It's time. The Zenith ships moved forward, firing their weapons at the outer line of Voidborn vessels. The space lit up with energy blasts and explosions. Now, Doug, Susan ordered. Take us in. The Defiance shot forward, engines at full power. Doug guided the ship through the chaos of battle, dodging around fighting ships and through gaps in the Voidborn formation. The Voidborn noticed them quickly. 5 ships broke off to intercept the Defiance. Incoming, Helen shouted. Evasive maneuvers, Susan commanded. Ryan, target their drive systems. The Defiance twisted and turned as enemy fire streaked past. Ryan's shots were precise, hitting vulnerable points on 2 of the pursuing ships and slowing them down. But they couldn't dodge everything. The ship shook as energy blasts struck their shields. Shields at 40%, Helen reported. Another hit rocked the ship harder. Direct hit to the port engine, Paul called out. We're losing power. Reroute auxiliary power, Susan ordered. The ship lurched forward again, but slower than before. More Voidborn ships were turning toward them now. We're not going to make it through their line, Paul said, his voice tense. Susan was about to respond when Lisa called out, Admiral! I'm picking up a transmission. It's not from the Zenith ships. Put it through, Susan said. A voice crackled over the speakers, a human voice. Defiance. This is Captain George Ward of the Earth Ship Venture. We see you could use some help. Susan stared at the view screen in shock as 3 Earth ships burst into view, firing on the Voidborn vessels pursuing the Defiance. Earth ships? Paul gasped. How? Captain Ward, Susan responded, finding her voice. Your arrival is unexpected. A chuckle came over the comm. When you left Earth, Admiral, you inspired others. We followed as soon as we could, and we brought friends. Behind the Earth ships, more vessels appeared. Smaller, faster ships of different designs. We stopped at the Galactic Council station, Ward explained. Your ambassador, Jack Winters, was very persuasive once he showed the Council our phase converter plans. These are ships from 7 different worlds who decided that if humans were brave enough to fight, so were they. New hope surged through Susan's chest. She looked at her crew, saw the same feeling reflected in their faces. All ships, she said, her voice strong and clear. Focus fire on creating a path to the Voidborn command ship. The Defiance needs to get close enough to use the phase converter. The Allied ships formed a wedge, driving deep into the Voidborn formation. The Defiance flew in the center of the protective formation, pushing toward the massive Void Star. Distance to target? Susan asked. 8,000 kilometers in closing, Helen replied. In the engine room, Alan and Olivia prepared the phase converter for full power. The device hummed louder as they increased its energy flow. The converter is drawing more power than expected, Alan reported to the bridge. We'll only get one shot at this. Make it count, Susan replied. The ship rocked again as enemy fire broke through their escort's protection. Hull breach on deck 2, Paul shouted. Shields failing. Distance, Susan demanded. 6,000 kilometers. 5,500. Helen counted down. A massive blast from the void star itself struck the ship, sending everyone sprawling. Alarms blared throughout the Defiance. Engine core destabilizing, Paul reported, his face pale. We're losing containment. Susan pulled herself back to her feet. Helen? 5,100 kilometers, Helen said. Close enough, Susan decided. Alan, activate the converter now. In the engine room, Alan slammed his hand down on the activation control. The phase converter pulsed once, twice, then released a wave of blue-white energy that spread outward from the Defiance. As the wave touched the nearest void-borne ships, the purple glow of their hulls flickered and died. The ships didn't explode. They simply stopped, hanging motionless in space. The wave continued spreading, reaching ship after ship, until it finally washed over the massive void star itself. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the points of the star-shaped vessel began to dim. It's working, Helen whispered. But the celebration was cut short as more alarms sounded. Engine core breach imminent, Paul reported. We have minutes at most. Susan looked at her crew, her brave, determined crew who had followed her on this impossible mission. Abandon ship, she ordered. All hands to escape pods. The galaxy chuckled when humans sent one ship. Then it arrived escape pods launched from the Defiance, carrying crew members away from the dying ship. Paul coordinated the evacuation from the bridge, making sure everyone got to safety. Admiral, you need to go now, he urged Susan, who still stood at her command station. Not yet, she said. Alan, Olivia, Lisa, are you clear of the engine room? There was no answer. They're still trying to stabilize the converter, Paul reported after, checking the ship's internal sensors. If it shuts down before affecting all the void-borne ships. Susan nodded. I'm going after them. Get to an escape pod, Paul. That's an order. Before he could argue, she was already moving toward the elevator. The ship shuddered around her as the damaged engines struggled to hold together. In the engine room, Susan found Alan and Olivia working frantically at the converter controls while Lisa tried to maintain communications with the Allied fleet. You need to evacuate now, Susan told them. The converter is becoming unstable, Alan explained, not looking up from his work. If it fails before the wave reaches all the void-borne ships, some could recover. I'm staying to monitor the effect, Lisa added. The Allied ships need to know which void-borne vessels are neutralized. Susan looked at the three of them, dedicated, brave, willing to risk everything to complete the mission. She made her decision. 2 more minutes, she said. Then we all leave. No arguments. Those 2 minutes felt like hours. The ship rocked, with small explosions as systems failed throughout the Defiance. The engine core warning changed from a steady alarm to a pulsing scream that meant catastrophic failure was imminent. Time's up, Susan said. Let's go. They rushed to the nearest escape pod bay but found the corridor blocked by fallen debris. Susan led them to an alternative route, even as the ship's internal structure groaned around them. They reached the last remaining escape pod just as the final warning sounded. The 4 of them crowded inside and Susan hit the launch control. Nothing happened. Launch system damaged, the pod's computer reported in a calm voice. Alan pushed past Susan to access the manual controls. I can bypass the system, he said, but it will take a minute. We don't have a minute, Olivia whispered. Outside the small window of the escape pod, they could see the battle. The void-borne ships hung motionless in space, affected by the converter's energy wave. The Allied ships were moving among them, approaching cautiously. Alan worked with frantic speed, connecting wires and rerouting power. Almost there, he muttered. True. Ship gave a massive lurch. Warning lights flashed red throughout the pod. Engine core breach in 10 seconds, the ship's computer announced. Alan, Susan said, tension making her voice tight. Got it, Alan shouted, connecting the final wire. The escape pod shot away from the Defiance just as the ship's engines exploded in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave caught the pod, sending it tumbling through space. Inside, the 4 humans were thrown against their restraints. Susan hit her head on the control panel and felt warmth spreading down her face. Then darkness took her. She woke to the sound of voices. Not human voices, but the chirping speech of the Zenith. Susan opened her eyes to see a medical bay with strange equipment. Dr. Sam stood nearby talking with a Zenith medical officer. "Admiral's awake," Sam called out when he noticed her stirring. Soon Paul, Nancy, Doug, and Ryan gathered around her bed. Their faces showed relief but also something else, a kind of wonder. "Did it work?" Susan asked, her voice rough. Paul nodded. "Better than we expected. The converter didn't just disable the Voidborn ships, it freed them." "Freed them?" Susan tried to sit up, but Sam gently pushed her back down. "The Voidborn weren't one race," Ryan explained. "They were dozens of different species, all controlled by parasitic beings that Commander Zev calls the Masters. The phase converter disrupted the Masters' control." "Where are Alan, Olivia, and Lisa?" Susan asked, suddenly worried. "They're fine," Paul assured her. "Minor injuries only. They're helping establish communication with the freed Voidborn ships." 3 days later, Susan stood on the bridge of Commander Zev's ship, looking out at an incredible sight. Hundreds of ships, former Voidborn vessels now free of the Master's control, floated alongside the Allied fleet. Representatives from dozens of races that had been enslaved were meeting with the Alliance members. "It's more than a victory," Cretel said, standing beside her. "It's a revolution. These people have been slaves for centuries." Susan nodded. There was so much to process. "And Earth? Have you received any news?" "Your Captain Ward sent a fast ship back with news of the victory," Cretel said. "They should have reached your world by now." A human figure approached. Jack Winters, the ambassador who had stood alone before the laughing Galactic Council. "Admiral," he said, smiling. "The Galactic Council has requested your presence. They're not laughing anymore." 1 week later, Susan stood in the same great hall where Jack had been mocked. This time she wasn't alone. Her crew stood with her, along with representatives from all the Allied worlds and the newly freed races. The council leader Zoral addressed the gathered beings. "We were wrong," he said simply. "We dismissed humanity as young and inexperienced. We laughed when they offered one ship against hundreds. We failed to see that innovation and courage can overcome even the greatest odds." He turned to Susan. "The former Voidborn fleet, now calling themselves the Liberated, have asked to form an alliance with Earth. They believe humans understand freedom in ways that older races have forgotten." Susan looked at her crew, at Alan and Olivia who had created the miracle that saved them all, at Doug whose flying skills had kept them alive, at Ryan, Helen, Lisa, Nancy, Paul, and all the others who had risked everything on this mission. "Earth would be honored to form this alliance," she said. "But not just with the Liberated, with all who wish to join us." She looked directly at the council leader. "The galaxy is changing. Old enemies can become new friends. Those who were once enslaved are now free. We have a chance to build something better together." As the council chamber filled with cheers and sounds of approval from hundreds of different species, Susan thought about how far they had come. From one small ship facing ridicule to standing at the beginning of a new era for the galaxy. The old council might have chuckled when humans sent one ship, but no one was laughing now. Back on Earth, crowds gathered to welcome home the heroes of the Defiance. Susan saw her daughter Kate waiting at the landing pad, tears streaming down her face. As Susan stepped off the shuttle, Kate ran to her. They embraced as the crowd cheered around them. "I knew you'd come back," Kate whispered. Susan smiled. "We humans are good at beating the odds." Above them, ships from 24 worlds filled Earth's sky. No longer enemies, no longer strangers, but allies and friends brought together by one small ship that refused to give up. The galaxy had changed forever, and it all began when the humans sent one ship,